and the Farm Bureau are all arm in arm, and they don't want to see any little thing is a chink in the armor. And I've had that discussion with them. I said, give us something. Don't just say no. Like I said, give us taro, give us coffee, and they don't want to do it. They're afraid that if we pass something here, that all of a sudden other states will say, okay, they're doing it there, and we'll start. And it probably would. Yes.
As an advocate for something that may be of a smaller concern, given the number of bills that come across in the legislature, what advantage is it to know about pork barreling and riders so that can an advocate or lobbyist say, look, we don't want to pass it as is, or can you piggyback and pork barrel or whatever? Is there any advantage to that, and what is that?
There's definitely advantage to adding things onto the bills. So to do that, you have to have a relationship with the chair of the committee, number one, or at least someone who's on the committee, and have a close enough relationship. It's challenging for those of us in the neighbor islands because you need to be there, because that bill is going, it's got to be heard in an hour, and so they're huddling and saying, what are we going to do? We got to fix this bill. Here's an amendment, that kind of thing. So that's kind of how it works. But yes, a lot of things do get added on, and that is a good strategy, but you have to be there. In terms of unrelated bills, they're not supposed to be. And if there's something that, you can add things on to bills if they're related to subject matter. The law says that the title of the bill has to reflect the contents of the bill. So that the bill might be about irrigation and ag lands, you couldn't put a highway thing in there. So there are some rules. Some chairs will play kind of fast and loose with the rules, but it's up to me and to others if we catch something to stop it. Because sometimes everything's supposed to have a hearing, and some chairs will say, well, we had a hearing on this last year, we don't need to have a hearing on it this year, and they'll put stuff in. But there's a lot of people watching. There's a lot of eyeballs watching this.
There's a mythical beast on Maui I've heard of called the Old Boy Network that seems very good at getting their way and having sometimes the majority of what seems like the majority doesn't get their way. And I don't know if there's any way to impact that, if these old boys are going to pass away at some point, are there young boys being groomed to take their place, or what can we ever do to, it's just not progressive and sensible around here, and I'm just looking for ways to impact that. It's one of the reasons we invited you here.
Well, thank you. I used to be an outsider, but now I'm an insider. I think that's just the way it works. Nobody picked me to run for office. I chose myself to run. But the more you serve, the more people you know. So the old boys are only doing what I'm trying to teach you to do. They're only doing developing relationships, supporting candidates, trying to promote agendas that are important to them. That's all they're doing. They've just been doing it longer and are more effective at it and have those relationships. Those old boys started the revolution 4 years ago that threw out the Republicans and brought in organized labor and did a lot of good things for this state. So I think it's just the way it works, a push and pull. And we lost a bill. It's I forget the bill number. It was a barrel tax. It's hard to talk about taxes from cameras. Kind of joking. Because what's the first rule? You can't get elected unless you serve. You can't serve unless you're elected. You can't get elected if you raise taxes too much. That's the barrel tax, though. It was a good tax. It's basically a carbon tax. And oil is a bad thing. We should tax bad things and use that money to do independent renewable energy projects, in my opinion. And so that's what that was. We lost that bill. The Senate did not override the governor's veto. The House did. That's a big disappointment for me. But we lost it because we were sleeping at the wheel. We took it for granted. I took it for granted. I thought we had the votes. No one had objected to it. And then last minute, the airline industry came in, literally the day before the vote, when the override, and start walking the hallway saying, you know, this is going to cost us X millions of dollars. You know, the economy's also already bad, and we lost all airlines, now we're going to lose somebody else. And it worked out to 25 cents a ticket or something. But they still feared it out, and the other side, our side, for the want of a better way to say it, was not there in strong enough numbers to do it. Everything, somebody's ox gets gored, as they say, no matter what. I mean, there's always someone who doesn't like what you're doing, someone who's going to hurt financially maybe, or someone whose lifestyle is going to change. A lot of what we deal with is regulatory. Every license, every profession has a license, every license is covered by the state. And so everyone's there pushing and pulling on their licensing. And so the nurses and the nurses' aides and the nurses' practitioners and the doctors and the pharmacists and psychologists and psychiatrists, and everyone's, it's turf battles all around. And so, I'm getting a little bit off track. But no, everything we do, somebody gets hurt. There was another question. I'll just repeat the question.
I wanted to ask you about the difference between calling in or emailing, and also when organizations ask me to sign a letter they've already pre-written and email it in. What's the influence that actually has?
That is a great question. And I'll be a little fuzzy on the answer. Because it all adds up. Okay, I would say something is better than nothing. A form letter is better than no letter at all. The best thing possible, you have a relationship, and you walk into their office and say, I need to talk to you. This bill's important to me. I help you. I live in your district. You know, you told me you supported this stuff before. Here, please do it. Or educate the person, maybe a little information. So that's ideal. That would be one end of the spectrum. The other end would be maybe a form letter. The numbers matter. My staff does not add up pros and cons. Okay, we don't say, okay, we got 51 for yes and 100 no. But we get a sense of it. And the reality is, because we're talking about competition for time and resources, right? Most of these bills are just sailing through. If I get a handful of calls on an issue from my district, I'm going to sit up and pay attention to it. If I get 100 calls or 100 emails, you know, you better believe I'm looking. I better get this out of the pile and look at it a little closer. And then you have the whole growing controversy. And so if all my colleagues are getting the same, and when we have lunch together, we go down to vote on something, say, well, gee, what's up with that bill? You know, I didn't even, well, we're getting, so it makes a difference. The more personal, the better. So you can kind of back from there. You can say, in-person visit is the most effective, that maybe phone calls are kind of hard. I mean, you can leave a message. If I have a relationship with you, and I get a message from you with your name on it saying for or against something, that will mean something to me. You know, hopefully, you don't ask me to call you back, because it's just hard. But I will if you do. But just say, you know, please tell Senator Hooser or whatever that this is a good bill. I hope he supports it, and then your name and where you're from. You live in the district. That is important. And then you go to individual emails. Okay, here's something that's kind of important. If you're doing testimony, when I'm scanning my emails, okay, so I'm getting just a ton of them. I mean, without exaggeration, I get a lot here. And my staff pulls out the junk. They pull out the newsletters and the flyers and the spam and all this stuff, which is a ton of it. Then I'm scanning. If it says to Senator Hooser, it goes in one pile. If it says to all senators, it goes in another. So if it's a CC to me, it gets less attention than if